At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
And we're back on the Northland Sports Page. Hour number 2 begins. It begins in a big way with PA because right now we're preparing for the Vikes opener a week from tomorrow. Right now everybody is 0-0, which of course in PA fashion means we can't find the first loss with what? A flashlight.
Oh, very nice. And we're playing flashlight.
Absolutely. We bump them in with a little Parliament flashlight. I'll tell you what, you don't need a flashlight to find our sponsors. We are blessed with a lot of them.
Absolutely. Let's start with the longest serving member of the sponsorship list. Arola Architecture Studio carried us through some tough times, so thank you, Ryan. Hoops Brewing, ABS Auto Solutions, Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies, Comfort Systems of Duluth, Advantage Emblem and Screen Printing, Kohler Toyota and Kohler Hyundai, Mike Regan at Christensen Group Insurance, Assisted Living Locators. You can reach them at www.assistedlivinglocators.org/Duluth. Kraus Heating and Cooling, your Carrier HVAC authorized dealer, Mount Royal Bottle Shop, Ferguson Bath and Kitchen, and the Blackwoods Group, including their locations in Proctor and in Two Harbors, Tavern on the Hill up by the colleges, and on London Road.
So 1,000 times thank you to all of our sponsors for keeping us afloat. We are nearing our 7th birthday as a show. So incredibly fortunate to get to do this. And this show, we're always fortunate when we have this guy. It's always a little better when PA's with us.
100%. Let's get the energy level up.
We will. Good morning, PA. How are you, sir? Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday, happy Labor Day weekend, and man, there are so many different ways to go off the last 2 minutes I've been on hold. I mean, you come in with flashlight, so the initial thought is for the Minnesota Vikings a week from tomorrow, who wants to take the bull by the horns and become the next atomic dog?
Yes.
That's all four who got that. Secondly, I mean, I just heard more sponsor reads than I do with live reads on K-Pan in an entire week. So props to your sales staff. That's fantastic. And thirdly, the regular season indeed does begin, and it'd be nice to give you guys a week-old birthday gift with a victory over the Giants. Happy birthday. 7 is the number of perfection, and a perfect performance against the Giants would be sweet.
It absolutely would. And I know that, week 1 out of a 17-game season, you don't want to put too much into it, but this schedule is a bit of a gauntlet at the beginning. Do you think there's a little extra emphasis being put on this game 1 because the Giants aren't supposed to be a great team? Now, we know nothing with everybody 0-0, but one of the best shots to get off to a great start is that week 1 matchup for the Purple.
Yeah, generally speaking, teams don't look at it that way. So if they don't look at it that way, I don't look at it that way. I mean, it's such a mental and physical grind for these guys and these coaches that, they look at the schedule and they're like, okay, the Niners went to the Super Bowl and we got this game here and this Thursday with Detroit in the mix and then SoFi, stuff like that. They look at it that way. But when the season begins, when they look at the Giants, they don't necessarily think the way we're going to think, losing record. Daniel Jones only played 6 games last year. They'll know all that, but they'll look at it like this. If you make a mistake on Malik Neighbors, you'll be down 14. If you don't block Dexter Lawrence the right way, Darnold gets sacked 5 times. They added Brian Burns. So now what do you do with Kayvon Thibodeau and with Dexter Lawrence in the middle? Now they have some really good pass rushers, but their secondary leaves a little something to be desired. So, now you're Kevin O'Connell, who would throw it 80% of the time if it made sense. Well, he's going to find the corners and secondary scenarios that are L's and try to expose them. But there's a reason so many games in the NFL are close, because all these players are good. And when they have motivation, like opening weekend, that's when you get their best.
No doubt about that. Opening weekend is always super exciting for everybody. And I know, PA, you did a lot of shows at the State Fair here recently. I'm curious what kind of vibe you're getting from fans. I know you're excited. I know we're excited. Steve Patosha and myself do a show called Time for Two More that's after Fan Line. We let the local folks call in and give what they think will or won't happen for this team. And emotions are all over. What were the crowds like at the State Fair? What are they thinking about the Purple upcoming?
I mean, the general feel that I get is that people are happy, and they're happy, because of what the future holds with J.J. McCarthy and what they saw in that Raiders game and what they've seen in the interviews and the press conferences. Justin Jefferson is locked up. That makes people happy. Christian Darrisaw is locked up. That makes people happy. The general manager, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, his first year of the 2022 draft was not great. But valor was not the better part of discretion. In other words, with that first round pick, Lewis Cine, they're not like, well, we're just going to force this thing into this spot, even though we don't think it belongs. So he cut bait, so things are rolling along beautifully with this team right now, man. And you obviously have a new quarterback and a new running back. And I'm excited to watch them. But, with Sam Darnold, I said something at the State Fair, since you bring up the fair. It's like one of the final things I said yesterday before we left. We're talking about the game a little bit, me, Charge, and Nordo. And, I laid out a bunch of cool things about the Giants, like I just did with you. But then I kept saying, but Daniel Jones, but Daniel Jones, but Daniel Jones. I mean, he has some ridiculously bad numbers in certain situations. But then I'm driving home and I'm like, when your quarterback is Sam Darnold, who I absolutely believe in, I know the offensive staff deeply believes in him, and with Aaron Jones, what is coming at defenses. But nevertheless, if somebody were to be like, hey, the Vikings have this, and this, but Sam Darnold, you can't argue with that until Sam Darnold shows he's not the Sam Darnold that people are laying into from the Jets and the Panthers. Know what I mean?
I do, and I like that. Dave Cook, I was going to say, but Daniel Jones, does he give Ed Donatel cuts of that big contract? Go ahead.
Absolutely right. Say, PA, pretty much every week we have Vencie Glenn on the show, and last week we asked him that exact question. What can we expect from Sam Darnold? And he said to us, guys, here's the thing. What you can expect from Sam Darnold is Sam Darnold. So what we're wondering is, what have you seen in Darnold over the preseason that makes you go, nope, I think there's a little more there?
Yeah, I mean, it's with Vencie, I respect the answer, but I don't think it's fair to say, well, expect Sam Darnold, because if Sam Darnold's story is finished, well, then shame on everybody who believed in him at any stage anywhere. I mean, that if it's over at 26 or 27, if the story's done. I mean, if who he was with the Jets and the Panthers, and it wasn't embarrassing, by the way. I mean, he was just up and down, and he made, just think Mullins last year, with these 400-yard games and then turnovers at the worst time. That would happen to Sam. So I don't think it's fair to shortchange the experience he just received, sitting away from it for a minute with Kyle Shanahan and the highest of high-end offensive approaches and staffs, and a lot of coaches around the NFL say that, and he got a full Super Bowl experience. So now it's not like he's here on a 3-80. He's here on a 1-10. So 1 year, $10 million, I think 7-8 of it guaranteed, and so he knows this is on Sam. So while I respect the take, and when it comes to predicting what we're going to see, all I can say to that is, because you can't say but Daniel Jones and also not go but Sam Darnold. That's fair to do. So what's it going to be with the best opportunity he's ever had in his professional career? I can't exactly pinpoint that, but what I can share is when you follow Kevin O'Connell's system, if you're Kirk Cousins, if you're Nick Mullins, if you're Sam Darnold, if you're J.J. McCarthy, if you're Jaron Hall this preseason, it's going to work. O'Connell's offensive system is extremely high-end, especially in the passing game and exposing flaws. And the offensive line's pretty good. So it's the pressure's on Darnold here, man. And I think he's going to come through, re-identify his career, and get himself a nice deal.
I would like that idea. You used a phrase that I think is perfect. It's hard to predict what we're going to see, and it gives me a segue to change topics a little bit. I'm going to use a phrase that the kids use. Explain it to me like I'm 5, and I mean that with the new kickoff rule, because with Kane getting cut, I was surprised, especially with this new kickoff rule. but I wondered, maybe that means I just don't understand it. What do you expect to see from kickoffs this year?
Well, with the cutting of Kane, there, and I'm going to talk about this on Tuesday when I'm back on the radio, because I didn't really get into it last week, and it just kind of hit me, is like keeping players like Kane, you're keeping a roster spot basically to hope kickoffs aren't touchbacks. Okay, so now you're going to play him at gunner, all right? Maybe play him at gunner. I mean, with all due respect, and I love Kane, he's my brother. But I didn't think he stood out and was unbelievable on punt coverage at gunner. Najee Thompson kind of stole the show. So I think, Kwesi and the staff, they're starting to draw some lines in the sand here. Okay. We recognize 2022 draft wasn't great. We're not afraid to move on. We're going to get a laundry list of free agents, like from Grenard through Cashman and all those guys, Aaron Jones. We're going to get a laundry list of free agents. You know why? Because we can see their past performances against NFL players, and we like them and we find value. So now the guy from the stock background, looking for value, trying to find things at low prices and sell high, which would be big performances. Well, now in his third run through, you find value moving up to get McCarthy, up to get Turner, but you got to give up stuff. But you know what? I mean, I'm giving up a bunch here on Saturday of the draft. Well, I've never seen those guys against NFL players, but I've seen Grenard and Cashman and Jones and Van Ginkel and guys like that. I know what they can do. So the newest line in the sand here may be we are not keeping players who only play one or two plays a game. Roster spots are too valuable.
PA, it's interesting. I was talking to somebody the other day, and he was taking shots at Kwesi, and my response was, yeah, but who gets all these undrafted free agents that we don't talk about? When we take shots at his draft, we don't take into account he's getting starting players, or at least 53 roster guys, off the scrap heap. So I think we have to give him a little more credit. I was listening to you and Gabe talk earlier on Vikings Entertainment Network, and he said something interesting. He said a solid secondary really takes the pressure off pass rush. PA, I think that's 100% true, but do we have a solid secondary?
That's wow. Where's your mind right now on this Labor Day Saturday?
Right.
I mean, you got an extra day off talking about the secretary. But anyway, that's a very interesting question, because the pass rush was bolstered with Jonathan Grenard. All right, Pat Jones playing out of his skin. Big year for Pat Jones. He knows it. Hasn't been great during his career, but hasn't been bad. Then you got Dallas Turner. Turner is ballyhooed. I sense that things were just a little, he didn't jump out of his skin during training camp or the preseason game. So he's 21, and he's still learning, but he's extremely gifted. All right. So then you got maybe Levi Drake Rodriguez, some Taki Taimani, some of these deep draft guys or undrafted guys they took, maybe given a bump up the middle. And I start there because it's the secondary that we knew before Gilmore was signed. It's you needed to have a rush to make sure you could protect those guys. I do think the gap is closed, and here's why. Because last year into the Tampa Bay game, first game of the year, the primary three corners, Caleb Evans, Byron Murphy Jr., and Mekhi Blackman, they had played a combined 61 NFL games. Now this year, if you take 3 or 4 of them, let's go to Fabian Moreau, who might play a little. You got Gilmore, Shaq Griffin, Byron Murphy Jr., and Fabian Moreau. Well, they have a combined 441 games of experience. Now, with that, Griffin was hurt all training camp. Gilmore is in the second half of his career. Fabian Moreau, they got off the street. Byron Murphy Jr. was here, and he's scrappy and he's good. The belief has to be that as the rush develops and becomes more unpredictable, because Flores needs plays on tape to unfurl the tricks. When you line up 7 across the line of scrimmage and teams have seen it on tape 75 times, you got no idea where it's coming from. Major advantage for Flores and the Vikings. But we're not there at that moment. So now the belief has to be you have tough veterans who know how to win at their job long enough to let somebody pressure the quarterback, as opposed to younger guys who, if they just make one mistake, 3-step drop, bam, 14 yards, people pissed off. So mesh the experience with the youthful vigor of the pass rush. And if that thing comes together, because I think the defense is going to be pretty good this year, and I really like Ivan Pace Jr. and Blake Cashman in the middle. Really, really like that. If that meshing of the veteran secondary and the youthful pass rush, if that meshes and the right guys on offense stay healthy, we're in business for a big one.
Talking with Vikings Vox Paul Allen, and speaking of being a Vox, the broadcaster in me wants to ask you this question. I graduated high school some 27 years ago, but I remember getting the book and getting 3, 4, 5 copies of it. Oh, the places you'll go. Now, when we talked about the schedule, we talked about that Texans game at home is going to be super cool because, hey, we used to play for you is true on both sides. But when you look at the road games for you as a Vox and you look at where you're going combined with the team that you're playing, what's a road trip you look forward to most?
Well, I don't want these to sound like champagne problems or like I'm being spoiled. From 2013 through last year, we've been to London 3 times. It's cool. I mean, it's sometimes you're there shorter than others, but there's a lot of clump that goes into it, but that's okay. You're in London, you're calling a football game, and they're fun to do. So let's just end it there. But with that said, despite, being a little Londoned out, I'm really excited for that game at Tottenham Hotspur. And part of it's kind of personal in that where we're going to stay for the first 2 days of the trip, 2.5 days, it's in a place called Watford, which is 45 minutes to an hour outside of where the stadium is. We stayed there in 2013 before they beat the Steelers at Wembley. The place is phenomenal. It's this countryside spread out thing with farm pastures and a football field cut out in the middle and World War II bunkers in the woods that you got to be careful to not step in. That place is immortality, and I never forgot it from 2013. So I'm excited to go there. But then, assuming everybody's playing, well, then you get A-Raj. We haven't seen A-Raj in a little while.
Right.
So you get A-Raj, when I think A-Raj in the latter stages of his Packers run, just go back to 2020, the first game of the season. I mean, that's something I'm never going to forget in my life. There were no fans in there. It was the only game we were permitted to keep our windows open in the Vox box. We had to close them for the rest of the home games, because of the overzealous nature of fear. And with those windows open and no fans, to hear Aaron Rodgers on third down basically chuckle and yell out the plays, and everybody, including us, could hear it, and then just run up a bunch of yards and points. I mean, that's something I'm never going to forget. Aaron Rodgers in a stadium where there are no fans to distract him. It was unbelievable. So I like calling Aaron Rodgers games, and I think that's going to be a cool one.
I like that. I got to ask you this because earlier this week, and you said something earlier in this segment that kind of leans itself to this question. It's the simple fact that you said KOC or Kevin O'Connell, to be more formal, would throw it 80% of the time if it made sense. Well, back on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week, it looked like he might have to because there were 2 running backs on the roster altogether. What is this backfield going to look like, do you think, eventually as the season gets going?
Well, that's a great question, man. I mean, because like the cutting of Kane, okay, so now it doesn't mean I'm right here, but, let's just roll with it. I said line in the sand. We ain't going to keep people who just to put back there on kickoff, and if they touch back every game, then why somebody on the roster? Because Kane probably would be the 4th best running back on this team. Okay, so that's a decided point. That's drawing a line in the sand. Kwesi does that a lot. He'll draw a line in the sand where it's easy to determine if you're right or if you're wrong. And when it comes to what you just asked about the running back situation, well, there's another one. We're cool keeping 2 running backs. We got 2 on the practice squad. Myles Gaskin, I'm guessing almost made the 53. I think it was really close. I know O'Connell likes him, and Myles is a better running back than Kene Nwanwu. He just knows how to play the part. Like Ty Chandler, we like Ty Chandler. He still has a lot more to show, but he's super fast, very slithery. But how about when Cam Akers came in last year just for those few games, and we're watching Cam going, damn. I mean, look at my man slide. Look at all this, the nuance of the game. So they have Gaskin on the back burner, but they're going to come into it with 2 running backs. And that gets Jalen Redmond, a pass rusher, on the team. That gets Levi Drake Rodriguez on the team. that keeps Tristan Jackson on the team, by making moves like that. So they're just, what I love about it is they're taking an antithetical approach to what a lot of teams have done for a long time. And it doesn't mean it doesn't work now, the age-old rituals and or approach to a football team and game. But it also doesn't mean things can't be changed. So I just love the way they're going right now, man. I hope everybody stays healthy. I think the team's going to make people really, really proud.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that part too, Brian. I think that we are underestimating this team. P, I got a quick question for you on the receivers. So we have, probably the best wide receiver in the NFL. We have a number 2 who is very, very talented. And then we have a bunch of names. And I'm wondering if you can help, listeners kind of get an idea, 3 through 6, what we're looking at with Naylor and the others.
Well, they're amazingly high on Jalen, and they always have been, because Jalen runs really good routes and he's very fast. But Jalen couldn't stay healthy, so he couldn't get rolling in practice. But then they had KJ Osborne also. Jalen's faster than KJ, and he's bigger than KJ, or as big. And Kevin featured him in 2 preseason games, put him in single coverage, ran plays that they'll run during the season, and Jalen mostly came through. So Jalen Naylor, I guess, would be from under the cover of darkness a little bit, but that's a name that you just need to elevate until it proves it doesn't work. Brandon Powell's a trick. They can run him out of the backfield. They can do a lot of things with Brandon Powell. He's tough to bring down. So you have them right there, but then you have Trent Sherfield Sr. And as like a full-time wide receiver, I can't predict that that's going to be something that's going to transpire. But that man's going to make plays on special teams, cause fumbles, and do things there. And he's super tough. It's just, then when Kene Nwanwu had like a 45, 48-yard touchdown in the preseason, Sherfield Sr. just absolutely blocked the bleep out of the Raiders. And I was like, wow, look at my man go when I watched it back. So they're cool there. They're deep, but Naylor's the key here. Oh, the other key is just everything with Addison and the off the field situation, and then you go to Cleveland, and very early in the first practice he messes up his ankle. It's just Jordan needs some positivity. He needs some good things to start taking place in his life, because it's just been kind of a bad run for him, and with whatever's going to transpire from the off the field deal, unless I miss something, that's just kind of hanging over things. Mm-hmm. So you got to get rid of that too. So that's all key with Addison, man. And that's a metaphor for life, because when you're doing radio shows, I'm doing a radio show, working other jobs or whatever. If you got a lot of heavy things on your mind, chances are you aren't going to execute your toil to the highest of your ability. So I just like to get all that stuff behind Jordan.
No question about that. I think the entire fan base would too. PA, I want to close with this. It's a know your audience question. My last question was about 2 running backs being on the roster. CJ Ham is go crazy Duluth. Can Duluthians expect to see anything more from him with a limited number of running backs?
I got to say, go crazy Duluth and Denfeld High School. With getting response from fans, it's when I called it the Minneapolis Miracle. I thought the response was loud when it was like, well, the Vikings are more than Minneapolis's team. It was the Minnesota Miracle. And I'm like, well, I ain't going to go down that road. You're not in the moment. The game was in Minneapolis. But a mistake I made in CJ Ham's, I think, rookie year or second year, I accidentally called it Denfield, yes. Denfield High School. Oh, I just got destroyed. I mean, it's funny now to look back. I know I made a mistake. Okay, it's never going to happen again.
I'll make you feel better. You're not the only one ever to do it. Go ahead.
But they're super proud. But the A topic is Duluth go crazy because the fan base is super impassioned about its own, obviously high school hockey, Sandlin's team, stuff like that. CJ's just one of my favorites because there are few fullbacks left in the league. He can catch, he can run. He's a great locker room team guy that a lot of the young people come to, and he's very good on special teams. CJ, at the end of the equation, whenever he's done, he will go down as one of my very favorite people with whom I had the privilege of working. So I just love that he's on the team.
We appreciate that and everything you just said about CJ in terms of being favorite and thankful that he's on the team. That is us talking to you.
Yeah,
We're very
absolutely.
thankful that you're with us and on our team on the Saturdays. Let's do this again throughout the season. Have a blast. Another season underway. 2+ decades you've been doing this. We love every minute.
Love you guys. Call the Saturday before the Niners game. Let's do it again then if you have time. And we'll be 1-0, and we'll be heading into a game with Darnold against his former team. So that'll be cool.
I love that prognostication, and I'll tell you this. We'll have the time. We'll make time for you always because you do it for
Right.
us. Have a great rest of your Labor
Thanks,
Day weekend.
PA.
Yep. See y'all later.
That's PA. That's the Vikes Vox making fun of Dave Cook's secretary. We'll play buy or sell. I don't know if his secretary will help, but we'll be right back. We like to think we know a good buy here on the Northland Sports page, and the good news is we're about 25 minutes from having to say goodbye. A couple segments to go. Vencie Glenn will close it, part of Drawing Lines, courtesy of Roll Architecture Studio. And, of course, right now it's time to play buy or sell. We mentioned the OG, Roll Architecture Studio. We want you to buy everything all of our sponsors are selling.
Yeah, let's start with Hoops Brewing, ABS Auto Solutions, Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies, Comfort Systems of Duluth, Advantage Emblem and Screen Printing, Kohler Toyota and Kohler Hyundai, Mike Regan at Christensen Group Insurance, Assisted Living Locators. You can reach them at www.assistedlivinglocators.org/Duluth. Kraus Heating and Cooling, your carrier, HVAC authorized dealer. Mullen Royal Bottle Shop, Ferguson Bath and Kitchen, Blackwoods Group, including locations on London Road, Tavern on the Hill, in Two Harbors and in Proctor, and Arola Architecture Studio.
So, again, very grateful for all of our sponsors. Keeps us rolling. I mentioned we're close to our 7th birthday as a show. We're not that close. I appreciate PA wishing us a happy birthday, but whether we call it a birthday or anniversary, we will be 7 in November.
7.
But the way that the calendar's flying, it'll be here in a blink.
Yeah, no doubt. The calendar is flying. And the fact that we've been doing this for 7 is nuts.
Yes, and it's a blast every week, and this has been a blast ever since we invented this segment all those years ago.
I like this one.
Buy or sell, here's how it works. I'm going to give a statement for each of the 4 major sports leagues, NFL, NBA, NHL, and MLB. If Dave agrees, he's going to say buy, and he's going to tell me why. If Dave disagrees, he's going to say sell, and he's going to tell me why. Dave gets to determine the order, and he gets to have hot takes as he always does.
We are going to start with the National Basketball Association.
All right, this one is interesting. I don't know if you heard about Anthony Edwards and some of his comments about the eras before him and Michael Jordan being the only skilled player in that particular era, and Magic Johnson having a real problem with that and coming out and saying as much. I'm not going to ask you buy or sell if that was a dumb thing to say, because I don't think there's any doubt that that was probably a dumb thing to say. But this kind of goes into conjunction with a lot of Anthony Edwards' past statements with being the number 1 option on the Olympic team and all these things. So I'm going to ask you again, something I think I asked about a month and a half ago at Hoops Brewing. Buy or sell that Anthony Edwards' confidence for you has gone too far?
Sell. I think he talks too much, but I think the idea of his confidence being too high, I don't think that's a thing. I think somebody needs to sit down and say, if you're trying to get social media clicks, there's other ways to do it. And when you start taking pot shots at, inner circle NBA players, you're not going to win. And so don't bother. That's not a question you need to answer, right? Because again, you're saying Bird couldn't play, and you're saying Magic couldn't play, and Isaiah couldn't play, and Barkley couldn't. I mean,
basically the 92 Dream Team all went.
That's 100% right. You just said that there was no talent in the 92 Dream Team, and you didn't need to. I mean, the answer could have been, man, I really like the way Mike played and the talent that he had, and just left it. You didn't have to point the rest of it out.
So I'm going to buy that his confidence has gone too far if that is what is leading to these statements that he's making. You make a great point that somebody just needs to tell him, hey, whatever your message is trying to be, go about it a different way. But if this is part of him becoming who he is, because I think we've all said he's young, he's learning, and when he blossoms, he's going to become a superstar in the league. We all hope that's true as Minnesota Timberwolves fans. But the more that he says some things, and I like him, I'm not saying I don't, and I especially like him because he's on my favorite team. But I'm wondering if that statement is going to be the part I'm going to have to cling to. Are we looking at a guy who's going to become some sort of hybrid of a Jimmy Butler and an AJ Przinsky, where you go, gosh, that guy's pretty good, but he's a jerk. And if he wasn't on my team, I couldn't stand it. Because during those playoffs 2 months ago, I felt like most people were rooting for Anthony Edwards. And as a Minnesota long-suffering sports fan, it was kind of cool to say, I feel like most of the country is rooting for us. all of a sudden now I'm not sure I feel that way with Anthony Edwards if this pattern continues. He might be the guy where they go, he's good, but I'm going to enjoy seeing him lose.
Yeah,
and I'm just curious because he still looks like a happy-go-lucky guy, and then he talks.
Well, and they always say good comedy is the one that tells the story and brings you right to the edge,
right,
and lets you figure it out before you say anything, and that's how the laughter starts. Well, if he would have just gone to the point where he said all the things about Jordan
and then smirked and winked,
yes, I think that would have been a much more effective and yet very similar message.
Well, and it was interesting, too, how much the Minnesota Timberwolves got involved because Magic came out and said, what the hell are you trying to say? And then Kevin Garnett said, I don't think anybody today could compete in the era that I did. So some of it is pick a sport. They call them the old heads. Everybody gets get off my lawn, and my era was the best. They all say that, but this just got weird. And when you look at the statement, it got weirder.
One, you're right about that. Everybody says it, but then everybody also says that's the best generation of basketball. And Garnett, this is a whole different thing. They need to get him back in the building.
Right.
There's the guy that could say to
I was going to say,
if
Anthony Edwards damaged the relationship the Wolves have with Garnett further, then we got a real problem.
Yep.
I'll tell you this, when the news broke about Magic coming out saying, wait a minute, part of me did kind of go old head, and I love Magic, but I went, when's the last time we heard anything from Magic Johnson?
That's very true. All right, next, let's go to the National Hockey League.
All right, so the NHL, I brought this up with PA, believe it or not, because there were a lot of shows done on the mothership from the State Fair, and PA had Bill Guerin on. And Bill Guerin kind of died on the sword of the Minnesota Wild to be a formidable and maybe even a good team this year because of their depth. Buy or sell that the Minnesota Wild, in your mind, have good depth?
Boy, that's a good question.
Thank you. Got a couple of those today.
I am not a believer yet. And I say that because our depth has been buried in the AHL because of these silly contracts that Bill Guerin has done. So we don't really know how good Ogren can be. He's played a couple of games. Should you believe in his depth? Should you be positive and excited? Yeah. But do we know that? Absolutely not. Kuznetsov is the same thing. Did you like what you saw? Sure. For 5 games. You know who else played 5 really good games? Sammy Walker. And he's gone. Right? Adam Beckman, right? He's gone. All these guys that played really well in short spurts, we don't know anything about them. What happens if a defenseman goes down again? People keep talking about Carson Lambos. All right, well, we haven't seen him play either. And so I think I love Bill Guerin. I really do. But I think he's delusional if he thinks we're deep. We are deep with guys with untradeable contracts, but we don't have depth in the minors.
Your last point is one of your best ones because here's the thing. It depends on how you define good depth. And I think good is an operative word because to me, good depth means you have really good top-end players, and when you get beyond them, there's not that big of a drop-off. Part of that is correct for the Wild. They don't have a ton of drop-off as you go deeper into this team. Problem is they don't start very high. You've got Kirill Kaprizov. I love Eriksson Ek, and you hope with Boldy, you hope with Rossi, all these things. But the reason that they say they're deep is this is a team, to me, that's littered with third-line guys.
Yeah, that's, we talk about it with...
So it's depth, but it's not good depth.
We talk about it with receivers. You've got a number 1, you got a number 2, and good teams got a number 3. Well, we have Kaprizov at that level, right? And then, like you said, Boldy's right there, Eriksson Ek is right there. And then you literally have just a bunch of guys. If Zuccarello steps up and has a renaissance, yeah, he's going to be good.
If Jared Spurgeon comes off 2 major surgeries and that decor is solidified, they're decent.
The other thing is as much of a Gopher fan as I am, you have got to pray that Brock Faber last year is Brock Faber going forward and not just somebody that had a really good year and the other teams didn't know how to exploit yet.
Right. The thing that baffles me, and I'll admit, of the 4 majors, my depth, pun intended, of understanding is probably the least when it comes to hockey. But I look at it as if you're a basketball team and you've got 5 small forwards that all start for you, you're going to have some advantages in some places, you're going to have a wash in some places, and you're going to have a disadvantage in some places. That, to me, is what the Wild look like. They've got a lot of guys that could be pretty good second and third liners. Depending upon how you match up on a shift, you could look great and you could look really, really silly at times.
Yeah, the question would be, given everything, how many first line, if you gave percentages or whatever or ranks, how many first guys do they have?
Right.
1.
Yeah.
Eriksson Ek is probably close. But he's not I don't think he's a first line center across the board. So you're right. Their depth is okay depth. It's not great depth.
Well, I'll tell you this, and this kind of made me smirk as I was listening to Bill Guerin at the fair when he was applauding this team's depth. Then he went on to name the people that constitute that depth and then mentioned, well, we need him to get back to a 30-goal scorer, him to get back to a 25-goal scorer.
If that happens, they will be good.
I was going to say, that's a different thought. If you get every player on your roster to reach their peak, that's not depth, that's optimal.
Yeah, that's very true. If Zuccarello comes back playing like he's 29,
right,
that's a whole different animal. And so if that happens, he's right. But we haven't seen that in 5 years.
All right, so 2 down, 2 to go.
All right, let's go with baseball.
All right, Major League Baseball, the negatives were out in full force all week because, as I told Dave Hoops about an hour ago, the Minnesota Twins won last Saturday, and they hadn't won again until last night. And Pitchfork Nation was ready. Rocco sucks. This bullpen sucks. This team is smoke and mirrors. The poll ads didn't pay for anything, and they're reaping what they sow. We get that. But the panic meter was off the charts with the Minnesota Twins. And the negatives, quite frankly, were walking around puffing their chests out because I told you this team was garbage, and for at least a week, they were. Buy or sell this in terms of your own panic meter. You're out on the Minnesota Twins making the playoffs.
No, and I'm not. I'm going to sell. I'm not out on them, frankly, because their manager keeps this thing together with, spit and duct tape and chicken wire. If this team gets healthy, let's do the Bill Guerin part. And Buxton comes back after a couple weeks off with his hip, and he's good to go. He's not Buxton we hoped for, but he's Buxton that we saw at the beginning of the year. Now all of a sudden they've got another spot filled, and Willie Castro doesn't have to worry about playing center. Brooks Lee comes back, and he's doing okay. Now you've got another spot filled. All of a sudden they're dangerous again. And if you get Correa back at all, and I'm beginning to wonder if that's going to happen, they can get in the playoffs and make a little bit of noise. They're a little like the Wild. I mean, like it or not, their rookie pitchers that have come up have been okay.
Right.
And if they've got that background in going into next year, and you can actually take Louis Varland and put him in the bullpen where he belongs, all of a sudden that pitching staff's pretty good. Brian, we can agree or disagree on your GM, but your GM's generated half to 3/4 of your pitching staff.
No doubt about that. So I'm going to buy that they make the playoffs, which means I'm selling my question. I'm not going to go the return to health angle because I'm not that confident in that anymore because we've been hearing about it for a month and they're still not back. So At what point do you say, as other people have put it, the cavalry's not coming? My thought is this. They're in every game. It'd be different. I mean, if they're looking non-competitive and they're losing 9-2 and the starting pitching's been bad, it hasn't been bad. Bailey Ober got obliterated the other night, but he got obliterated for the first time in 2 months. So they're in every game. And that's where the bullpen frustration comes in because they're blowing opportunities. I'm just a believer in this can't happen constantly. You stay in enough games, things are going to break right. And I know that's, not a very tangible take, but there's a reason the Minnesota Twins have been 10 to 15 games over 500 for a while. They can't always be the 2-8 stretch that they just got done with. I just don't believe that. And then the other thing is, quite frankly, you look at the week that was. And I know they won last Saturday and they won last night. Last week, they were a game back of Kansas City, and they were 2 back of Cleveland. Today, they're still a game back of Kansas City, and I think they're 3.5 back of Cleveland. I don't think the division is a real possibility, but I think the wild card is, and when you played as bad as they did and lost almost nothing, you got away with one.
Well, and again, from a franchise that's had Billy Gardner, Ray Miller, Johnny Gorel, you got to look at your manager and say, this might be the best single season managing job that they've had. Yes.
But if you look on social media, he's public enemy number 1.
Which is crazy because his team is broken and they still win. And, TK's obviously won the World Series and had some really, bummer years in there too. But you tip your hat at TK for being the guy. This is the best managing job I've seen.
Real quick with the NFL, so Vencie gets some appropriate time. Buy or sell that of the cuts that the Vikings made. I talked to PA about Kane, so I won't go that route. But the Jaron Hall decision surprised you.
The Jaron Hall decision surprised me. Thinking more about it, I understand it. I just don't understand who they brought in. They brought in so he's not going to embarrass himself on the field. I get that. But he's also not going to win you a game. So I don't know.
So I know at the end, I always say we're up against it, we're pressed for time, and twice today we've done a miraculous job of getting back on schedule because somebody said something where I can go, yep, because the Jaron Hall decision did surprise me. Now, we had people call in, Steve Patosha and I did, asking for him to be the starter, and that's ludicrous. But at the same time, I didn't think he was going to be off this team. But then when he was, I thought, well, maybe they're going a different direction. And
Yeah, we're going to go get DTR or something.
right. But then you see Rippon come in, and it's, okay, what in the world is happening here?
Why?
Right. When you look at Brett Rippon, it was just, hey, isn't that Mark Rippon's nephew? That just makes me feel old.
Yeah, 100%. And that, yeah, that's the wrong Rippon. I heard that more than once, too. I wonder if the old man can play.
So it'll be interesting. We'll find out in a week and a day if the Vikings can play. We'll talk to a former Viking about what it's like waiting for the opener. Vencie Glenn to close the show. Stick around. We'll be right back. It's our favorite safety doing the safety dance with Vencie Glenn. It's all part of Drawing Lines, courtesy of Arola Architecture Studio. Let's get right to them. 2-5. Good morning and happy Saturday. 1 week and a day from a Vikings opener. Let's talk about it a little bit. But first, more importantly, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, man. Just chilling. How
Always
you guys
good.
doing?
Always good when we're chilling with you. It makes a better Saturday for us, certainly. Dave Cook is chomping at the bit to speak to you. Go ahead.
Well, once again, Vencie, I got a phone call saying, so who do you got on this week? And I said, well, we have Paul Allen, we have Vencie. And they were like, oh, my gosh, thank goodness. I said, why? He said, well, we get the unabashed love from PA, and then we get our reality and our football guy to come afterwards. And he said, that's the perfect way to do it. The other way wouldn't work. So thank you for finishing with Vencie.
I had to apologize for that. I'm not a downer guy, but
No.
man, I just deal with I deal with reality in sports. It works best that way.
Yep.
Well, that's absolutely what we appreciate. Take me through the reality of this weekend because, Vencie, I'm married to a teacher who is going to savor every last moment of this weekend because reality hits next week with school starting for her. NFL players, they've been working for a while with training camp and the preseason, but this is the final weekend before that regular season grind. As a former player, do you treat this any differently or is it just a weekend?
Oh, no, you treat it differently, man. You just want to make sure all your boxes are checked and you're approaching the season the right way because, like I say, you just don't – if you're a real professional, you just don't know when it's going to be your last play. You know what I'm saying? And you don't think about it, but – you know, you got to go out and take care of your business. You're paid to do a job. It's still a job. You know, it's not college anymore. So it gets serious. And you know that you might not have played all preseason nowadays. And you got to turn it up a notch. And how do you do that if you haven't been challenged yet?
Vencie, I want to talk from the point of view of safety and how some play is set up. When you're at the snap and the play is about to go, what, as a safety, what are your first keys? What are you looking for first?
My first thing is personnel in the game. Who's coming on the field? What's the down and distance? Who's in the secondary on my side? What's the matchups? What's the mismatches? What did my film study tell me they like to do on third down in this situation? Where's my pressure going to come from? So where's his hot spot? Alert to that. And more than anything, just run to the ball. That's how quick the process with me goes. And you got to think about all those things as a free safety, and you only got like 15 seconds after each play.
Vencie, I want to talk to you about players that were on the bubble until this week and then made it. Have they had enough time to exhale and realize that, holy cow, I'm employed by an NFL team, or is that still butterflies all the way up to even the first quarter of the opening week?
I just think it's a process, man, because you know you drafted or you are free agent and you made the team. That's your goal to start out when you're in high school, you know. So you're there, and it's just about learning because things going to come a lot faster. And if you think training camp was fast, it gets real fast during the season because they move on.
When you talk about real fast, I always think of defensive secondaries in general because of how fast the game is and how much the aerial attack is a big part of it. We had PA on, as Dave mentioned, at the top of this hour, and he talked about how much more experience is now in the Vikings secondary because they have some veterans. Well, veterans are also older. I think I asked you this during the 2-minute segment we had at Vikings training camp, but how quick is an adjustment of somebody who joined the team brand new? Even if they're a veteran in the NFL, it's still a different team. Could be, as you say, a different system.
If you're a veteran and you're coming somewhere, learning football is easy. And just it's the terminology because defensive linemen, they only got so many moves, so many so many rushes they can use. You know what I'm saying? Because it's schematics. At a free safety, it's just learning more the terminology and running to the ball. At corner, just learning how your defense is applicable to your style of play. And so it's just different for every position. You got to just look at it like that.
They were talking today about a few of the different receivers that are with the Vikings now, and PA was talking about Brandon Powell, and he was talking about Jalen Naylor, and one he said super quick, does a lot of really good things. The other one he said flat burner, a little bit bigger. As a free safety, which one concerned you more? The guy who could run by you or the guy that could make people miss?
People miss. Oh, everybody got speed in the NFL, and it's just all about angles. But just think about Tyreek Hill, prime example of what you're talking about. He gets the hitches, and he takes him 70 yards. Barry Sanders runs backwards 7 yards, then he runs upfield for 35-yard gain. So it's a guy that you can't tackle. I don't care about one guy just running straight away. You know what I'm saying? You can cut him off and take away his angle and his speed. But that quickness and that versatility, man, it scares the mess out you.
Vencie, our opening topic today was in conjunction with Labor Day. We talked about guys who are hardworking. We call them lunch bucket players. When you think back to your NFL career, was there anybody on any of the teams you played for that stood out for having just a tireless work ethic, regardless of if their natural skill set was high or not?
Oh, you got a few of them guys on every team. Oh, it's not just the John Randalls and guys like that. It's the guys you don't know about, the guys that are backups that just run down on special teams, that are just guys that just work hard, and that's on any level. You got guys that are not known are the ones that work the hardest, and you appreciate that, you know, because you know that guy doesn't have all the God-gifted talent, but he works hard to be successful at what he does and brings to the team.
Vencie, we've got less than 2 minutes to go today. Obviously, we'll talk to you next week. So this is the less than 2 minute drill to close this week's show. But I thought about saving this question for next week because next Saturday will be the eve of the opener. The Vikings are at the Giants. Of course, your final season in the NFL was with the Giants after leaving Minnesota. Do you have any fond memories as a New York Giant, even though I hope you won't be cheering for them next Sunday?
Yeah, I have great fond memories every team I played for. My best year statistically across the board was my last year and with the Giants all the way across the board. It's just like coming into my own. I really felt like before the injury, made me retire. But yeah, I had great memories and I had sad memories because it was my last year and we didn't win and we weren't a very good football team competing week in and week out. And that kind of bummed me out, especially coming from Minnesota, when we was in the playoffs every year and just dominating defensively.
Everybody talks about, and I'll give you 30 seconds to answer this, everybody talks about the media in Minnesota, cornfield country, flyover countries, got to be very different than New York media. What was it like as a Giant dealing with New York media?
Oh, they just ask you the tough questions. It's not just the media, it's the fans because they're football knowledgeable, not saying that Minnesota fans aren't, but it was tough, man. You in the big city with the big boys and the big lights and everything, and they want perfection. It's a lot of people.
Vencie, you give us perfection week in and week out. Let's do it again next Saturday. We appreciate you, 2-5.
All right, I appreciate you. Hey, real quick, I wanted to say hello to Mandy and my little nephew, Cash, for listening in on the show today. Thank
awesome.
you.
We love that. Vencie Glenn giving us more listeners. We'll
Thanks,
talk in a
Vince.
week, my friend.
All right, take care.
Absolutely. Great show. Dave Cook, thank you. Thank you to the Montgomery family. Thank you to Dave Hoops. Thank you to Paul Allen. This was fun.
Yes, it was. It's ready to talk football next week. Hold on to your hats.
We will do that. Have a good weekend. We'll see you.
At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.